So if you don't know anything about Washington, that's what this segment is for. You will be further informed tomorrow, which is a crossover episode with Locked On Huskies co-hosts Roman Tomashoff and Lars Hansen. So make sure you listen or watch, wherever you're listening to or watching today's show, to that episode as well. But biggest thing with Washington, biggest two things I think to know is, number one, they haven't won a road game this year. They are undefeated at home up at Husky Stadium, which, as we know, tough place to play. They have not won a road game. And some road contests have gotten away from them. They lost by 2 touchdowns to Indiana's backup quarterback. Penn State beat them 35-6. Iowa bested them in Iowa City, and Caleb Johnson ran wild. It has just been a struggle anytime they go on the road. And I think that that's to be expected with how much newness there is up in Seattle for the Huskies, because they've got new head coach, Jedd Fisch, who came over from Arizona. He's a good coach. He's a good coach. He can recruit. I think he's a good play caller. Like, he will do well up there. And Washington will be a much improved team in 2025. For this year, though, it's advantage Oregon in just about everywhere you look on paper, at quarterback, at receiver, tight end, offensive and defensive lines. Like, across the board, Oregon's just a better football team. But eventually, Jedd Fisch is going to get Washington back to at least contending to be a conference championship caliber program. I have no doubts about that. For this year, though, it's been a struggle. So when you have all the new players that they're working in, there are some transfers. There are guys who were on the roster last year but didn't go to Washington to play for Jedd Fisch. It's just looked like a team that shows glimpses, but then doesn't live up to their full potential. I predicted them before the season to be 6-6. Assuming Oregon wins this game, that's going to play itself out. And the reason I felt that way is they just lost so much. New offensive line, new defensive players, 21, I think, of 22 starters from last year's team. There's nothing really similar about it. But throughout the course of this year, what has frustrated Husky fans about the Washington offense is there will be times where it looks how it's going to look in the future. You will see a balance of running and throwing the football, which is what I think Jedd Fisch ultimately wants to have. Pro-style guy, not quite as under center as Jonathan Smith at Oregon State, now Michigan State, but you'll see a lot of those single back concepts, play action boots, clever uses of tight ends or running backs in the screen game. I think they do a good job with a number of those things offensively. He wants to be balanced. He doesn't have the personnel to be completely balanced. He doesn't have the personnel to have a great offense just yet. I think they will, but right now they definitely do not. So quarterback-wise, there has been no clear indication whether they're going with Damon Williams, who's going to be their starter in 2025, or Will Rogers, who's a longtime veteran, who began his career at Mississippi State with the late Mike Leach, RIP, RIP Pirate forever. Gosh, I miss Mike Leach a lot. He was just fantastic in so many ways. But Rogers has been around college football for a long time. He started the year being very efficient, not explosive per se, but efficient. He's sitting at 14 touchdowns and 7 interceptions on the year, and Damon Williams might be taking the starting job. I wouldn't be surprised if they go with Williams, who's more of a runner. Rogers is more of a pocket passer who's got plenty of experience. So when pressure's in his face, Will Rogers is more dangerous throwing the ball. Damon Williams is more dangerous to exit out the back door and scamper for a first down, and he's a really, really good athlete. So I don't know what they're doing at quarterback, but I know that they want to be balanced, and that's something they have half the ability to do. Because their receivers, I think they've got a couple of good ones. Denzel Boston is a Washington recruit through and through. He's a 4-star guy coming out of high school. Didn't play much last year because the receiving core was insane. He's now their leading receiver. He's good. He's good. He's not Roma Dunze. He's not Jalen McMillan or Jalen Polk, any of those guys, or even Jeremy Bernard, but he's good. But Denzel Boston, Giles Jackson, Jeremiah Hunter, that's the core of their wide receivers who have been catching passes this year. They're incredibly capable. If you do not show up ready to go, and of course their old teammate Jabbar Muhammad probably knows what it's like to go up against them, at least in a practice environment. You don't show up ready to go against those guys, they can absolutely beat you. Jeremiah Hunter was a receiver at Cal. He's a guy who I'd kind of compare to Trayshawn Holden. He's either a really high-end 2, or Holden here is a number 3 receiver, which is representative of how good Oregon's wide receiving room is and how talented it is. But he's a low-end 1, high-end 2, or the highest end 3. I've liked Jeremiah Hunter for a while since he was at Cal. He's a good football player. Hasn't been super involved, under 400 yards receiving this year, But don't be surprised if he catches a touchdown, makes a big play, or something like that in this football game. So the receiving core is capable. It's just a matter of throwing them the football. Are the quarterbacks going to have time? Are they going to make accurate throws and make good reads? Those are the questions. Far more than, well, do they have playmakers on the outside? Yeah, they do. And then there's Jonah Coleman. If you went up and down this Washington roster, you would be hard-pressed to find more than 2 guys that could go to Oregon right now and at least compete for a starting job. Jonah Coleman would absolutely be one of them. And I love Jordan James, but there's no way that you would take Noah Whittington over Jonah Coleman. And there is a world, it'd be an interesting battle, quite frankly. There is a world in which Jonah Coleman would start over Jordan James. I love Jonah Coleman. I thought last year he was the most underrated running back in the Pac-12 because it was all about Noah Fafita at Arizona and Tetairoa McMillan. But like every time Coleman got the ball, I felt like he was doing good things. He's over 1,000 yards this season for Washington, again, behind an offensive line that isn't good. He is aggressive. He is quick. He can make explosive plays. He's good in short yardage situations. He's not a huge back, but he's got plenty of power to him. He's got agility. Like he is like a smaller but faster Royce Freeman. That's what I see in him. So he's a talented guy. Now, if he doesn't have anywhere to go, of course that doesn't matter. Hence my first segment today talking about the defensive line. But for this Oregon defense, that's not a guy who in the passing game or in the running game, you can allow to get to the second level because he's just tough to tackle. He'll run through you. He will run around you. He'll just get away from you. That's just what he does. So Jed Fish, I think, wants to be balanced. Hasn't always had that opportunity, but they don't abandon the run. They're definitely more pass than run in the way they try to move the football down the field, but I don't think you're going to see them completely get away from running the football, or at the very least trying to get the ball to Jonah Coleman. So those are the guys for Washington offensively that are going to make plays. The other guy who could start for the Ducks or push to do so is Carson Bruner, the linebacker. Really good football player. Really, really good football player. He's the guy who stands out the most to me on defense. Ephesians Pryzak, maybe, their corner. He transferred from Arizona. He could push to be Oregon's number 2 corner as well. But Nico Reed has played awesome this year. So those are the only guys that I'd say are high-end, all-conference or NFL caliber on this Washington team right now. But for Oregon, they can take away all of those guys. Yeah, Denzel Boston's really good. Well, got to go one-on-one with Jabbar Muhammad over here. And with Washington offensively, what they did particularly early in the year, they'd move the ball down the field, and then they would, cartoon-wise, they'd step on a rake and it would whack them in the forehead. That's what they were really good at. They kept getting in their own way. You can force this team into turnovers. You can force them to make mistakes, whether it's penalties or a bad snap or the timing is off or missing a block. Like, they've had a lot of drives where they're marching right down the field, just like Oregon against Purdue earlier this season. They're marching down the field, and then all of a sudden, the 30-yard line comes around, and they have hit a brick wall. And no matter how hard they try to ram through that wall, Dobby has snapped his fingers and said, no, you're not going on to platform 9 3/4. So you will see glimpses of that. I don't expect that to be sustained over the course of the whole game because I love Oregon's defense and they should have a big advantage up front. But do not be surprised if you see glimpses of like, wow, that running back's really good, or hey, this drive looks really impressive. The key is not letting them do it more than a couple times because they haven't been able to all year. I don't suspect that starts on Saturday.